So thank you. I know this is an incredibly busy time, but it had been a while. We've spoken to many of you individually over the last many months, but hadn't spoken with you as a group. And I do want to get feedback from you on a couple of things tonight. Um, so why don't I, and as people, might be joining us a little later, let me give you a brief update. I was actually in Newburgh last week. I think it was last week, might have been the week before. Time flies for an event at the Armory that Jennifer joined us at. I thought it was a nice event, Jennifer. I hope you had good feedback because there were actually new people there that I hadn't spoken with before.
Yeah, and I want to thank you again for coming. I think it was really great that you were able to show and people were able to talk to you, not only those from the RAB itself, but the community and even the DoD folks. So
Yeah, no, it was good, and we've had a little follow-up with several folks, since then, and I know there are a couple of fellows as well that I need to reach back out to, but, we've had a little bit back and forth, so I thought that was good. What I wanted to give everyone, an update on tonight is where we are with a multi-site study, for the 8 sites. So we had a meeting at the Centers for Disease Control at the end of September, and all the leads from the 8 sites came together to discuss the data. So as you all know, we have finished the data collection for the main part of the study. So this was the component that most of you participated in, where there were blood draws and urine samples, and then the questionnaire completion, and then for some of the children, an additional set of questionnaires and a visit with us. So all of those data have been collected, and we are now in the process with the combined data, the pool data. So all of the site data together to be looked at. And there is an initial list of 10 manuscripts that they're going to start with using these pool data. And I'll list them here, but we'll put them together in a summary that we'll also post to our website, and we're working on that. But the 10 first manuscripts as a group that we're working on is dyslipidemia, or the high cholesterol, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, thyroid disease, the neurobehavioral outcomes for the children, pregnancy complications, and then the child antibody response to vaccination. So those are the first manuscripts that are being looked at, or the first data analysis, I should say, that are just beginning the proposal. So how we do things to be scientifically rigorous is we draft a proposal, the scientists that are working on those analysis, and we discuss it. So in fact had a meeting today on the steering committee group that oversees this process, the publications work group, to make sure it's moving. And so those proposals that I just listed have been approved, and data analysis has begun, and those results should be ready sometime in late spring. And one of the things we're working on now is a process to be able to share the results of those analyses with the communities. And so I will keep you up to date as we move through that process. In the meantime, what we want to do for our own sites here in New York is also start working on data analysis specific to New York and our communities here, as well as present to you the analyses that we have been able to finish over the last few months related to the biomonitoring effort that went on in 2016, as well as some of the initial findings we're getting from the multi-site studies. So that just the number of people that participated, the average concentration of PFAS that we measured in our participants, and how that compares to the biomonitoring data, and the health outcomes that were reported at the biomonitoring stage. I don't know if you remember, but with the biomonitoring in 2016, there was a brief health survey. So my doctoral student looked at the reported health outcomes in 2016, and is ready to present those results to both communities. So one of the things I want to talk about tonight is when and where Jordan should present those results, but also to chat with you a little bit on what your priorities are for us to look at in the data related to different health outcomes. I rattled out the national data that we're going to look at first, but what specifically in your communities would you feel you're most interested in? Is it the 10 that I listed off, or do you have others that we want to do? Um, so Lorene is asking about breast cancer. So we did not, breast cancer is not on the list of the initial 10, and I should point out the 10 that I just listed are just the initial, and we'll keep moving. The study itself was not designed to look at cancer. However, the Pennsylvania site is partnering with folks at Temple University to do a cancer analysis that combines with a cancer registry in Pennsylvania. I don't have a lot of information on how they're doing that, but I can certainly get it. Breast cancer is definitely of interest in general. It was in the NASEM report and we discussed it. And I can certainly bring that back to the group. I don't think we're large enough to detect a difference for the breast cancer rates, but it doesn't mean we can't compare or look at what else might be going on that we could maybe look at and try to get an answer for the community around breast cancer. But that's a good question. I know that's coming up quite a bit.
And that's separate than the New Hampshire study, one that was
So the P study, so in for this, when I talk about the pool data, it's sometimes the P's New Hampshire analysis will go ahead and present their results because they're a little bit ahead of us. But then in these pooled analysis, they're going to include the P's data to increase the sample size. So they're a little bit in the opposite direction where they have some of their initial analyses underway for the New Hampshire site alone, and then they'll have the pool data, where the rest of us will have the pool data and then start in on the individual sites to do that. So they'll have a mix of both. And I think as we go forward, that'll be the pattern. There'll be times when there'll be multiple sites, either all 8 together, or some of the sites might pool their data to look at a specific question because they have a particular, maybe they have the same PFAS, for example. So maybe all the PFOS folks will combine to look at something related to PFOS. Or we'll have the multi-site or just the New York site for that. And one of the things we're working on right now is the communication plan to update the website so it's clear on who's working on what, because we'll have this first flurry of papers over the next year, but then there'll need to be continued effort to keep looking at the data. And so we'll be updating our website, certainly at the Albany site, but nationally, they need to update their website to make sure all that communication is there. Jennifer.
Just piggybacking on what you just said, are there concerns that if you're creating all of these different manuscripts, separating PFAS, PFOA, all those things, that it then minimizes the broader impact of what this discussion was supposed to be about? Because it's a PFAS study, not a PFOA, PFAS, we're not breaking it down. And by doing that, is it a disservice to our collective communities if we start?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. It's why we have a steering committee and then a publications work group to actually help manage that in some cases. And what we're leaning into for each of these manuscripts with the pool data, and it'll be those analyses that are most impactful. Because it has the largest sample size and has a national representation in the study. And so all those analyses in the same manuscript, we'll look at all of the PFAS combined, but then we'll have a different mixture analysis that looks at because as we all know, people are exposed to a mixture of PFAS, as well as pulling out any single PFAS that might be jumping out to be more related. So that'll be, to the extent we can plan ahead of time, that'll happen in those big manuscripts. I think you hit the nail on the head in that what we won't be able to do or what we need to be mindful of for the publication of these peer-reviewed manuscripts is to make sure we aren't watering down or aren't confusing the message by separately publishing individual sites or individual analytes, separate from these big major manuscripts. But what we can do is make sure each community knows what we're seeing for their community, and that can go on our website, that can go in reports that are specific to New York, and then reference the fact that these are part of a bigger effort. And so but for all that to happen, the communication needs to be very clear to both the communities, but also to amongst the scientists, so we know what the objective is. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Laureen, let me pull up your comment here. So, Lorraine, just to make sure I understand, you're saying that the priority list started with the C8 findings? Or health outcomes of interest, I should say. Oh, I see what you mean. So the reason, so I think these 10, the scientists gathered together because we, in looking at the research and trying to understand what we needed to really understand, is because the C8 was only PFOA, and the multi-site study is able to look at a variety of the most common PFAS that we know of to date, and in a national sample. That's why we wanted to focus on these first 10, along with the fact there's been additional papers and results that have come out since the C8 that again suggest we should really try to understand this. The other challenge that we have with epidemiology is that it's even though the C8 was so large and one of the largest epidemiology studies ever, um, because we're studying people and we don't have a controlled environment like you do with, say, doing studies on animals, we typically need what we refer to as the preponderance of evidence. So we need lots and lots and lots of studies saying the same thing with different populations and with different measurements before the public policy folks are willing to say, okay, there's definitely something going on. And so even though it feels like we're beating a dead horse sometimes, we need additional information to add to the scientific literature with that. And so I think we're okay on that. I am pleased with this initial list of 10 to 11 here that we are expanding it a little to go beyond, to do a deeper dive into the cardiovascular type of outcomes, including, with the blood pressure and the cholesterol, but also with the heart disease and also with thyroid disease. And I think that'll be much richer for that. So, and then obviously the pregnancy complications beyond birth weight is also important. So it's expanding it, and epidemiology is often very repetitive because we do need lots and lots of studies saying the same thing even when we change our methods or change our populations up. And then we're more confident that there is something with this particular exposure when that happens. Two other components that the funding provides for and that are part of the mandate with this big study. One is related to an extensive um, dose response model, as well as what's called a metabolic PK modeling. And so what this does is, as you've all pointed out, when we do a study and we draw blood now and measure PFAS in someone's blood now, it doesn't tell us what happened 15 or 20 years ago. And typically, especially when looking at cancer outcomes, but also other health outcomes, we want to know what that original dose was, or at least what the peak dose was. And we can go back in time using math modeling to do that, but we know that the half-life varies, especially for men and women, and because of reproductive history and because of breastfeeding history and because of other conditions. So we're doing a lot of work with some of our questionnaire data, as well as some of the math modeling to help us with that. PK modeling is what it's called, to help better understand variation in half-life for people, so we can better and more accurately estimate somebody's original dose. But the other thing we have to do is reconstruct the environmental fate and transport of the chemicals that were in the and how they got into the water and into the drinking water. And to that end, we collected a lot of additional data from the water departments in Hoosick Falls and Newburgh, and then from some of the well testing in Petersburg to again do a lot more math modeling. And those efforts are ongoing. And we're gathering more data. And in fact, some folks were just at Washington Lake last week in Newburgh to get more core sampling because they needed that for that particular sample. So that's ongoing and will continue through the rest of over the winter and into the spring. And we'll report out on that in the springtime. And then, as I think you all know, the other component, two components we had was to get consent from women who had given birth in Hoosick Falls area or the Newburgh area over the last 20 years and receive consent to sample the newborn dry blood spots that were stored for PFAS. And that'll help us examine the history of PFAS exposure in the communities, as well as fine tune that half-life modeling that I just talked about. Because with that consent came a brief questionnaire on reproductive history. So that'll add some data with that. And then the other project we have is for people who participated in both the multi-site study as well as the biomonitoring effort back in 2016 in both communities. We asked for consent from folks who did both where to pull those stored blood samples from 2016 and measure the same clinical biomarkers we're measuring in the multi-site study. So we can look at changes over time and look how time has impacted any associations with PFAS. And we're the only site to be able to do that. So those samples are being pulled now and will be sent to LabCorp, and we'll be working on those, as well as the measurement of the metals. We have those blood samples from all of you that participated, and those metals analyses will be ongoing in the spring, and you'll get individual reports on that as well. Gabrielle.
Yes. How successful have we been collecting the newborn samples in Newburgh? Do we have a lot of participants or would use?
We had, I think it's June, we're over 200, right? Total, and most of them are Newburgh because a lot of our Hoosick Falls folks give birth in Vermont. And Vermont doesn't keep their newborn dry blood spots. So this is mostly a Newburgh effort, and it's over 200. So we've had a nice response from that. And we're pulling those spots now, and we'll do those analysis. So I think that'll be very helpful.
Okay, good. I hope I remembered to submit my yes.
If you want me to check, Gabrielle, I
Yeah.
can, because I think you gave me your information. So if you want me to double check, I can.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And you're looking for 20 years, like past 2000, past 2004?
98 to 2018.
Okay, my daughter was born in 97.
Okay.
So
I'll get in touch with you.
okay.
Okay.
Oh, 1998 until when?
To 2018?
Okay, so then my baby daughter definitely qualifies for that. She was born in 2007. Okay, let me know.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Will do.
Thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome.
So as we start thinking about what, and again, we'd like to come out to, and we can either do this, well, we can do a mix of in-person and Zoom or Zoom, but we would like to present, oh, Jennifer.
Oh, is the newborn closed at this point, or are you looking to do more of a push? Or
We are done sending out invitations. We sent out invitation packets and reminder postcards. Obviously, if somebody still has it and wants to send it in quick, we won't turn them away, but we're not doing any more recruitment, no more active recruitment.
okay, just
Yeah.
checking for tomorrow we have an event, so I just wanted to make sure whether to push it or not. Okay.
So the Jordan McAdam, who is my doctoral student. She's actually graduated and is now doing a postdoc in Washington, D.C. at the University of Uniformed Health Services and working on a cohort study of Air Force military personnel who have been exposed to PFAS. And she has completed the draft manuscript for both Hoosick Falls and Newburgh that looked at the biomonitoring data from 2016 to 2018, because Hoosick Falls had actually 2 rounds completed prior to the pandemic, as well as the health survey results. And we wanted to present those results to both communities, as well as provide some initial enrollment, as I said, enrollment characteristics of those who were enrolled in the multi-site study. So with regards to Hoosick Falls and Newburgh, there is a CPWG meeting. I think they're in the process of trying to schedule it for the week of the 10th of December. Is that right, Gloria?
We're working on it. Carrie did reach out to me yesterday and they're still trying to set a date. So I'll let you know as possible. Yeah.
So we were thinking that might be a good time to present some results to the community, but with the shares on and Laureen, I don't know, is that a good show, or should we have a separate meeting to do it? I guess is the question I have, or if we should plan a couple different meetings.
Petersburg crew can certainly come try to get to Hoosick Falls. I just don't know how many town board members we would get there, you know?
And it might be, I mean, could we do Zoom or Teams? Jordan is in DC. I don't know if we'll be able to get her up this way. If she were on Zoom, I'm happy to come out your way, but if, would Zoom or Teams be okay to present, you think?
Be fine.
Okay.
Sure.
Lorene, do you have a strong sense? Might be
What, Aaron, what date were you thinking of for the Hoosick Falls group?
Well, the CPWG was supposed to be December 17th, but I think there's a concert that night, so they're changing
Okay.
it to the week before. Oh, Lorene. But we can make, so maybe, well, we could do 2 sessions maybe, and maybe that's what would be needed anyway. Maybe we could do one
Okay.
in December and one in January.
That's fine.
Or Lorene, I can give you a private showing. With that. Okay. And then for Jennifer and Gabrielle, what do you think? What would work best for Newburgh? Should we team up with Newburgh Clean Water, or should we do something separate for the community? I mean, or do a couple different things? What do you think?
I think, I'm just speaking for me, I think Newburgh Clean Water Project would be more than happy to help. I'm just wondering, I mean, so you're talking about potentially 2 Zooms. And then at some point there would be in person, or are you just looking to see if it would be one or the other?
I think we could do one or the other initially, and then, you know, we can, and if people wanted to do an in-person, I can certainly come down and do it. I don't think we'd get Jordan up here for in-person, but I could certainly, you know, do an in-person event if people were more comfortable with that and wanted to be able to ask questions directly. But I was thinking Zoom might be if you want to hear directly from Jordan, would be the best way to do that.
Yeah,
So
I
we-
think, I mean, not to be greedy, but I mean, the more times that we can connect is
Yeah.
best. So I think we would definitely utilize a virtual component, whether we host somewhere and have a virtual feed in. And then that way follow up, like, you know, in January, as you were saying.
Okay.
You know, December's tough. We're coming off of Thanksgiving and then we're going into the holidays and we're all a little emotional for other things. And January is going to bring a lot of emotions too. So, and focus. So, I think it's all the more reason to try to have as many opportunities to connect and elevate whatever is being said. And also, if you have more than one, people can take what you've said, digest it, and then maybe have things to think about or ask in between for the follow-up.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I just see that Jordan was able to get on. So hi, Jordan. And so I think what I'll do, if it's okay with all of you, I'm going to have Gloria reach out to each of you to explore possible dates. And I agree, I had the same concerns about December and January, but maybe we can spread some things out and have small, shorter meetings so people can digest more and ask questions. And we can pull some handouts together as well that we can send ahead of time with that.
Is there any concern or threat that between now and time to publish, funding, whatever, will be pulled or?
So we are in the final year of funding for this project. So I don't think they can pull the funding for, and in fact, we're in what's called a no cost extension, meaning that officially the study itself ended the end of September, but we had all had money left for the analysis stage that we had, obviously, because of delays in getting going with the study due to COVID, we've been given this final year to spend our money to complete the analysis and keep moving with it. Now, that said, there'll still continue to be statistical analysis once the money formally runs out by the end of September, but those of us, especially the universities, have capacity to keep moving forward on those analyses. So we're okay on funding for this year. I don't see, even with the changes that have been made, they would have a hard time pulling back on it right now. What I am worried about is moving forward and the ability to get funding for this area of research moving forward. And that's the big unknown for pretty much everything that we do in public health. And we're trying to understand what would happen. The publishing results, this will be an interesting thing. So for those of us in a university, normally, and we all have academic freedom, so I can submit to journals the papers that I do, and those are reviewed by my peers and published, and the government can't really, that's a private stream for that peer review process. Now, normally when we have co-authors that are in state and federal government on our papers, there is a brief approval process that is required of them. So for the researchers that are at those institutions, and there is one that we have to go through at CDC. So on the one hand, it is possible, always possible, that things will get held up. On the other hand, we could still, in theory, publish. It just would be without CDC folks on the grant. So I think there's a process in between those two extremes that would happen. And then we'll just proceed as we need to. So enough of us are asking questions. The data are there, and they can be peer reviewed, and they will be published. It just might be a little slower, but we will keep pushing, and we have been pushing with that. Okay, great. People are sharing dates. Gabrielle.
Yes, just following up on what Jennifer said regarding, I just want to make sure I had it clear to do a virtual, like we would meet in one space and then have the virtual feed with Jordan come in. Is that what she was suggesting?
That's right. That's what I was saying. And I was definitely thinking, although I can feel free to argue against this, because I was thinking one for Hoosick Falls, Petersburg, and one for Newburgh separately. People could still go to both. We could advertise for both. I was just thinking because they get a little long. So I was thinking one would be focused on the data from Hoosick Falls and Petersburg, and another one would be focused on the Newburgh results, because the PFAS are different. And there's a fair amount of data for both. So I was thinking at least those two would be separate, and then we can always schedule a different, what's the word I want? Subsequent sessions or in-person meetings after that initial presentation to answer questions and to do additional, we can go back and look at data if there are questions come up and we hadn't looked, that we hadn't thought of to look at, that we can certainly do, and then report back out.
we're really short on venues. So that's why I went ahead and gave you my dates for that week of December so that Gloria can reach out. I guess it would be at the Newburgh Free Library.
Okay. We can do that. And are we able to pull Jordan into that on a Zoom link? Do you have us set up at the library?
Yeah,
I believe so, right, Jen?
yeah, there's plenty
Yeah.
of technology available. I think we'd have to make sure that winter hours don't impede because, you know, and things like that. But
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you can. I mean, we're very flexible. I mean, if we need the reason I want to talk to you as a group, I didn't want, you know, if we end up doing one group in December and another one in January, I didn't want the communities to get worried that we were, you know, prioritizing one or the other, but also it is a difficult time because of all the holidays. So, and that's why I want to get some ideas for dates from all of you, and to try and we'll balance this out. But, you know, so I think again, Gloria can take these down and then maybe communicate, and she has my calendar, as well. So we can figure this out in Jordan's schedule.
Oh yeah, I can't make it I can't make it Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. The second Wednesday of the month is transportation meeting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
it's okay. Like if folks want to email me dates or potential ideas, like, and I think Jennifer's point about looking into the new year because it's gonna start to get funky as soon as Thanksgiving hits as far as planning. Feel free to
Yeah.
email me and we can work it out together.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll figure it out.
All right.
My
Thank
my
you.
my big question here though is, will I know you're talking about bringing in, you know, data from the Department of Health's
The
draws and
biomonitoring?
stuff like that. I'm just concerned that people who might have participated in one but maybe didn't do the health study come to yours and then are more you know, how we can make sure that everything is relevant.
Yeah, and that was
Um,
my concern too, because I don't want people to get upset thinking we're gonna present results on the MSS, on the multi-site study, when we're not quite ready to do that. I mean, that's definitely coming in the spring. Really, but what I also wanted to do is, we know, and I'm often asked, people often ask, well, what did we find with the biomonitoring? Because there was this survey. And so Jordan did look at that and we wanted to make sure. So if you have any ideas on how we can make sure that's clear to people, and we can certainly present the timeline and what we're working on for the MSS, but it'll definitely be the biomonitoring health, the reported health outcomes that people reported at the time of the biomonitoring and how that feeds into what we're learning and we'll learn with the multi-site. So if you have thoughts on how we should communicate that and make sure it's clear.
yeah, I think, you know, I don't know the language, but I think we really need to make sure so that people don't
Get confused. Yeah.
get confused, get frustrated, and then also that worry that we always had from the beginning, which is to feel extracted from without, you know, we don't want this to be extractive. And I think you're also having to make up a lot of the work that DOH didn't do. You know, you're putting into more clarity what those test results were, what they mean, you know, without even though it was just a blood number. Uh, uh, sorry, it's late. My brain's a fog, but
We're all a little,
but you're
yeah.
communicating more than they are hearing from elsewhere.
Okay.
And so, you know, that's a burden on your side, unfortunately, but I think they can gain a lot, but they just need, their expectations need to be right when they walk in, or else they just won't, you know, they won't see value.
Okay, and that is very fair. It's definitely one of my concerns. So why don't we draft a few pieces of communication, Gloria? I'm looking at Gloria, not that she knows I'm looking at her, but the Gloria and Elisa and the team, why don't we draft a few things that kind of lays the groundwork, like refreshing people's memories of what it is we're talking about, and we'll run that by the full CAP, and because there are a number of people that aren't on tonight. And maybe, and then a few, I call them friends of the CAP. We have the CAP, and then we have a lot of other very helpful allies that help us from the communities, and get your feedback to see how that is resonating. And maybe we can, and Jennifer, as you communicate with folks who are also on the RAB and in community, and see if that is helpful, and we'll go from there. Because I definitely want to make sure we present this to the community, but I don't want them to get frustrated with us. And so I want to be clear. Yeah, I saw that Lorraine's concerned about making sure. So what we can do, and I get it. We're all tired. It was a sleepless week last week with the new administration, and we don't know what's going to happen. Things will get published, but I'll try to get more clarity from in terms of what implications we might have. There's an actual webinar tomorrow with our Schools of Public Health national organization on what to expect. Yeah, and so I was saying the same thing in Newburgh. It's very confusing, the difference between the biomonitoring and the study, and what DOH is involved in both, so that confuses. So we'll get some language together. And then there was another paper with DOH from Betsy Lewis Michael, who all of you may remember. She's retired, but still helping with some of these papers. And she has also recently submitted a paper, and we'll want to present those results as well, again, from the biomonitoring work. So we'll draft some language and send that to you and get your feedback on that. And then as well as set up some dates. So is that what I saw something fly across my email, Jennifer? So Jennifer's referencing there's a DoD town hall regarding the MCLs. Now I am worried about those with the new administration. MCLs adjustment for interim measures. So when is that, Jennifer? Do you remember?
So that's November 19th, but they need you to RSVP for it by, I think, the 13th. And
Okay.
I'll get the link. So if you're interested, I'm more concerned just in terms, I mean, I know it's DoD related, but it's more like the government looking for exceptions to not meet their own standards for when responding to things. And if they set that precedent, it just kind of goes downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I am very worried about that. So thank you for that reminder. I did have, this is actually the first I've had this, but at the Armory when we met last week, Jennifer, there's a veteran did come up and ask what was available for veterans care with higher exposures. And I've done a little work with veterans over the years, usually around Agent Orange in the Vietnam war zone, and we pulled them in. It was, and Senator Gillibrand's office was there, so we connected them, because usually coverage for the veterans has to come through some the Congress and the VA working together on that.
Yeah. There is one woman down in North Carolina, Kyle Horton, who is really a big advocate in fighting for veterans, and especially with PFAS. But it's a huge, complicated navigating map too.
And it is for every generation of, there's the veterans who are exposed to atmospheric test sites, and there was Agent Orange, and then there was the first Persian Gulf had a series of challenges with the burn pits, and then the second Gulf War as well, and then now the PFAS. So we'll keep moving that. No, I thank you, Lorraine. We'll double check the PACT Act. We'll make a note of that and see if there's any information in there. Okay. Hi, Ed.
Hello, sorry for my tardiness. Hope everybody's well.
Good to see you. We had a little confusion, Ed, because your AI robot impersonating you says that it's going to record the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm trying to catch up with the technology, and it's pretty invasive. So I
That's what I
apologize.
figured, because I know this happens. So we are recording it for our purposes with as we always do with our things, but we haven't accepted the one from your machine. So we did that. But Ed, we were just talking about dates to present some of the in communication around the biomonitoring data. So this is the data that were collected back in 2016 and 2018 when the biomonitoring, and there was a very short health survey administered in both communities. And Jordan McAdam my doctoral student, and I want to present some of that data along with some analyses that Betsy Lewis-Michael also has done with those biomonitoring data. And then that'll lay the groundwork for the analyses that we'll be doing with the multi-site data. And that's ongoing over the winter and into the spring months for those new analysis for the actual study. And so we're talking about December and January, and Gloria will be reaching out to get dates from folks and possible locations. And then we'll also circulate communication. We'll describe it because we want to make sure people are clear what we're presenting, that we're presenting on the biomonitoring data first, and not the study yet. The study data are still being analyzed, and those will be released sometime later this spring.
Did you guys discuss like what medium or where you would do this? Is this a city council meeting or a meeting that we would be trying to host someplace?
That's what we were just discussing, actually. So we had talked about maybe doing something at the library that was a hybrid, so that Jordan's now down in DC, so she could be on a Zoom and I could be in person, or it could be at city council, or it may be in partnership with Newburgh Clean Water. So we were soliciting ideas on where and when people might find it most useful.
Yeah. My 2 cents into it. I'd like the Newburgh Clean Water idea and/or Riverkeeper to support it. I think the RAB might also be interested in supporting conversation, but I'd like to do it on our own in the community, maybe to host it at the rec or at the community college or someplace where we can host it and present it on our own. If the library works, great. If it doesn't, some other place.
Okay.
But that's just my 2 cents.
And we were definitely talking about separate presentations, one for the Hoosick Falls community and the one for the Newburgh community. So definitely separate in that sense. And then an initial, and then we might, I anticipate maybe having a couple of different meetings depending on feedback and what people are looking for.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say to you, I really need to get in touch with you to talk about that EPA grant.
Oh, okay.
So if you have any time tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, I do. After I tell you what, I'll send you a text. Let me look at the calendar at the end of the call, and I can send you some times tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Yeah, so Lorraine's asking if we're seeing anything that's shocking to us or surprising. Not yet. I think, although we've just started to clean, it always takes longer than we think to clean the data and get it ready for analysis. I think, initially, I think what we're seeing is probably what we're going to anticipate. I think what will be new to us are some of these other PFAS that aren't as well studied, because the assumption is they'll be similar to PFOA and PFOS and their effects, but we don't have a lot of data, over time. And so this will help us with that. And I think doing these deeper dives into the subcategories of thyroid function and liver function and kidney function will be able to help us. I'm about to submit a paper on a different study with the Upstate Kids cohort, where we did measure PFOA and PFOS in the newborn blood spots, and we looked at cytokine patterns. And so cytokines are part of the immune system in newborns, and we did see shifts in the profile. Not that, it wasn't an analysis that could tell us it definitely leads to illness, but what it told us is that mechanistically, even at the newborn age, that the concentrations we measured, there does seem to be a shift in the pattern of the cytokines that you see in newborns. We don't necessarily know what that means. It just means that it did verify what we assumed is that they do have an impact on the immune system function. So that paper should be going out to the journal this week. And again, that's a different study population, but those are the types of things I can speak to. Yeah,
Did
yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, along the lines of the question that you just answered, I know that you studied lead as well. Are you finding anything significant with respect to the PFAS versus lead conversation?
So those, and thank you for that reminder, that we did collect blood samples to measure the metals, and we measured a panel of metals. So those samples are still being analyzed for metals levels, and that should be done this spring, right, June? Do I have that date right? There,
Hopefully sooner, more like December, January. It looks
So-
like they've analyzed them already. They
okay,
just need
and
to-
then so those letters will be going out so people know what we've measured in terms of the individual metals in their blood samples. But I agree, I am very interested to look at what the correlation is to PFAS exposures, as well as what implications there are for looking at the combination of the two together and the impact on health. And so I think that's going to be a critical analysis, but it will take us a little bit before we can get to that analysis, probably later this summer. People will get their actual reports, just like they got the reports for the other measurements, but those are just getting pulled now. And hopefully early winter, we'll get those individual results out, and then we can look at the data. So I am very looking forward to this is far too serious for that, but I'm anxious to look to see what we see with those correlations with that and the patterns. And what makes that analysis so unusual is we typically nowadays only measure metals in children, and now we're going to measure them, and we've obviously measured them in adults, and I think that's very critical for what we're trying to understand and explore. So we'll keep you updated on that.
I have one more question about, I know you were trying to reach a certain number in Newburgh. How did you fare? How far were you off? Or did you
We were off.
accomplish your task?
We were off, although comparable to the other, I meant to pull that list, Gloria. To the other sites, I think we have just around 500 total. Is that right, Gloria?
Well, for like for adults, we
Sure.
have 452, and for children it was 44, so around 500, yeah.
Total, and then it's about evenly split between Hoosick Falls and Newburgh.
Yes.
Right. So, and the 452 mark for adults is comparable to most of the sites. Pennsylvania and California had many more participants, but they had a different, well, two things. This was their first major study. We had done more in New York, but also they had a broader reach, a larger geographic area that they were enrolling in. And so we got it. We were hoping for 1,000. We got just about 500, and that's still a good size for what we want to achieve. And then overall, the study itself is over 3,000 adults. I'm trying to do the math in my head. Is it higher than that, Gloria?
For all sites, it's 5,775.
I'm sorry. So 5,000 adults. So I think, again, that combined pooled analysis with 5,000 adults will be quite informative, and that's very helpful. So in Newburgh and in Hoosick Falls, we'll definitely have a significant contribution to those analyses. And so we were pleased, especially coming out of the pandemic, which was so very difficult for both communities, and then trying to enroll at that time. So and we've had great community participation. That's actually, in terms of other papers I'd like to do, one of that we would like to take the lead on is the community engagement piece, and working with all of you and having you contribute to that paper. To describe the communities and kind of the history of this effort, and what we're doing to make change in the communities. So think maybe we can maybe sketch out a few ideas and send that to all of you on how to proceed with that. But that is a goal that I'd like to move forward on this spring.
The, the there's a real flip in the people who actually tested. Do you have any information on ethnicity and if like that for your study?
You were breaking up a little bit, but I think you're asking, do we have demographic information and be able to characterize what we're seeing for exposures and findings? Is that?
Yes, because I remember the 16 study was sort of overwhelming majority of the people tested were not Black Latina. And I wanted
Right.
to find out how the 500 fit with you.
Yeah. We do have that information, and I don't have it in front of me, but that's one of the things we can speak to when we present. It's still, if I were to guess, because we still have a lot of the biomonitoring. When we look separately, we still have a large contingent of older white people enrolled, but we did have a more diverse population than we did originally. So I think that's important. And then nationally, when we combine the data, we'll have a nice representation of across race and ethnicity, which is important for looking at multiple exposures and the social determinants of health that we need to consider when looking at the effects of these exposures, especially since the health effects we're concerned about are also tend to be highly correlated with the social determinants of health, and that to me is very concerning because now you're compounding the risk in those communities, given the exposures to PFAS, if it does bear out that these are indeed associated with these outcomes. So that's something to look at. But yeah, we can present that. That's some of the information we can talk about when we come to meet with the communities in December and January, because that's the initial demographic information we can talk about now. Looking at my list. So Lorene had mentioned, so I listed a series of manuscripts at the national level that we're going to tackle, and they roughly kind of group around cardiovascular disease, heart disease, the lipids, thyroid function, immune function in children. And then Lorene had asked about breast cancer. Are there other outcomes that you anticipate the communities wanting to know about or ask about when, right off the bat, that we should be thinking about, or at least look into to see if we have a lot of people referring to them? Gabrielle.
I'm sorry if I missed when you read the list or if I missed the email with the list. But has there been any conversation about renal failure or renal health?
That's a great question. We definitely collected information on it, but you're right, it's not on our list. So let's look at that. All right. Let me see what we've collected on it, and I know we did because that is one of the items of concern. So let me see if we've got anyone looking into that.
Okie dokie.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other, Lorene, reproductive issues. Yeah, in the mom or just in general in women. Yeah, because we do have a paper folks are going to work on pregnancy complications, but let me look at, I'm trying to remember if we asked about infertility and other types of reproductive outcomes. But and we did measure some hormones in the children as well. So let me get that list together.
For me, I think the impact on kids, I know that there may not be enough or a lot in the study, but I'd be curious to understand the long-term and short-term impact on the young people. And I know that was a part of what you were looking for anyway, but I'd be curious about that.
Okay. And we do have a group looking at the neurobehavioral outcomes in this first round of manuscripts, but there are some other questions we asked of the kids, and we can, and again, across different age groups. So we can, I'll get a list of what we have and at least kind of report out some of the descriptive stuff.
And the kids experience all the same testing. So the kids, okay. So their lead exposure will be on that also when you.
Yes, and for now, so this is what's unique. For New York, yes, because we're measuring that now in the lab, and we can then apply that to the outcomes. Now, the other sites were asked to, because we had it in our protocol, they were asked to collect an additional sample of blood for metals testing, but they weren't necessarily given funding to look for to actually do the laboratory analysis. So we may be the only site that has the metals panel right away, and to look at over in the spring. And so we can, and again, we'll lead the way on that and based on what we find. And I think that'll be critical. And June is confirming for me, we did collect information on fertility. I thought we did. So we can look at those results as well. Yeah, Lorraine's bringing up arthritis, because again, it's autoimmune. Two different versions. There's the autoimmune, which would be of particular interest here, as well as, again, some of the reproductive outcome, hormone-related outcomes in women that we need to explore. So we'll get a list together and start compiling. Okay. All right, so let me just summarize here. Gloria will be reaching out to all of you to solicit dates, possible dates and locations, virtual options for presenting some of the biomonitoring data, as well as the timeline for analysis of the multi-site. We'll also craft some communications for your feedback to make sure, because we really don't want people confused or frustrated that we're not yet, we're going to schedule these presentations, but they're not going to be about the multi-site study data. They're going to be about the biomonitoring data that's providing us information and guidance about how to look at the multi-site study data. So she'll be reaching out about that. And then again, we'll pull some communications together on what is the plan for the multi-site study data analysis. Again, we hope to, by early summer, have some of those initial results that we could present to the communities. And there might be some New York specific analyses that we can also present to the communities during that time, so people are aware of what we're seeing. And then we should also have some of the metals results to be able to look at in early summer, but we can certainly keep discussing that. And then based on that, we also hope to write a manuscript with all of you around the community engagement in the springtime, and the study and your histories of the two communities, and get that information out there as well. Are there any other questions? Concerns? We'll definitely be monitoring the impact on availability of funding for studies on PFAS after January. It's a bit of an unknown landscape at this point. And we'll just, as we hear things, we'll let you know. And if you hear things, please let us know. And we'll forge ahead. But we will still be able to publish, we'll still be able to get our data analyses completed, and we'll get information out. If I sense that things might be slowed down, we'll let you know, and we'll let you know the strategies of dealing with it. But again, things will get published. That can't be fully stopped.
Aaron, the analysis that I received in the mail, that was
Yeah.
the bio. Okay, is there going to be? I'm sorry.
Oh,
I cut
go
you off?
ahead. No. You were a little, the internet, it might be
Oh,
up.
okay. I received some results in the mail. That was the bio monitoring results.
You should have received both. So back in 2016, 18, you would have gotten those results. And then the most recent results, if you received results recently, it would have been from participating in the multi-site study. So that would have been your biomarker results that are measured in your blood, the PFAS that we measured in your blood, and then a new set of results will be coming this spring with the metals information in it. And we'll let you know once we get that information back from the lab, we'll be able to let you know when those letters will be going out.
Okay. So when we do the bio monitoring workshop or community engagement, will someone explain the measurements? Because I'm like almost zero in PFAS, but I'm right there at the average number or whatever for PFOS. And I don't know what the MCGLQRTW. I'm like, am I gonna
It's A,
die
B,
or
C,
am
D,
I
E.
okay?
Yeah, no, we have three. Is Jordan still on? She hopped off. So she sent me her slides, and she had units from 3 different sources, and they were all different. I said we have to fix this. But yes, absolutely, we will describe both of those. But again, and this again just speaks to our need to make sure we're very clear on where the data are coming from. And then I know from being at the Armory last week, and I'm again looking at Gloria and Elisa just to make a note, that people will ask if they can get a new printout of the results. And of course, the answer is yes. And we'll work with June at DOH to make sure that happens for the biomonitoring. So we'll make sure that information is in there, and we'll get a handle on the units, and show and walk everyone through that. And then I have reached out and have been working with an occupational physician, environmental physician at Northwell, Dr. Spaeth, who I think may have spoken with a couple of you. I do think, and I'm anticipating that maybe we schedule some grand rounds or some other lectures with the local clinicians to explain what we're seeing in the community as well, and we can work on that. We are hoping to work with Dr. Spaeth on a toolkit for the clinicians, so we've been talking about that for a while. So, okay, Lorraine, that's helpful too. We can do that as well in the Hoosick Falls area.
And I'm sorry I missed you guys last week.
I had fun. It was great, and lots of really good questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anything else? Any other questions? Things we should be mindful of? All right. Well, thank you all very much. As always, definitely, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. If you email me, copy Gloria and Elisa, or at least one of them, because with my new job duties, my email is a bit out of control, and I travel in between campuses, so and I miss some things. So, if you're guaranteed a more timely response if you copy my staff, and all that. And Gloria knows how to get a hold of me. And a lot of times they know the answer before I do. So they can also help with that. So by all means, please copy them, because they'll know I'll be reaching out with that. And they know how to find me if I'm needed right away. So we'll do that. Add that said, I'll text you after the call with some times for tomorrow. But thank you all for your time. Please stay safe, and as the weather's, it looks like it's starting to turn. And I know there are some fires in the area, so be careful. and let us know if there's anything we should be looking at or doing to help this process.
Thanks.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Right.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye now.